Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Fox 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto returned to age 6, a future king awakens, and Hinata, Ino, Sakura, and Temari are drawn to his inevitable rise part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please, press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. He looked around the class, a small smile on his lips. He remembered this day, even if it had been more than 12 years before. Soon, Iruka would walk through those doors. Soon, Mizuki would follow. Soon the rest of his life would start to play out and he would be able to change it, if he wanted to change it. He flicked a stray strand of blonde from his face. Blue eyes scanned the room one more time. Kiba was in the back room, a wide grin plastered on his face. Shikamaru was in the back too, on the other side, sleeping. Hinata was in the back as well, meekly poking her hands together. As his eyes roamed, he noticed the rest of the 9. Ino, Choji, Shino, and finally, his teammates. Sakura, meek shy little Sakura that would grow to become a monster in her own right. Sakura who would eventually be able to pulverize mountains with her bare fists. Sakura that would grow into a woman, strong and independent. A healer, a friend, eventually, but now she was a girl. A shy meek girl sitting in the middle of the class trying her best to be ignored. He wanted to go up to her, grasp her hand in his and scream. Believe in yourself. Tell her that she'd end up becoming one of the strongest women on the planet. She glanced up at him, a quizzical look on her face before she let out a blush. He smiled at her then turned to Sasuke. Naruto had vague memories of Sasuke as a child. He didn't know how he held up now. As the doors slid open, Iruka walked in, Chunin vest on, that long scar on his nose and a small grin on his face. Naruto smiled too, then, realizing the man would still hate him stopped. What was he going to do? As he was now, he couldn't do anything. No, he could do something. It just wasn't very much. Hello class. Hello sensei. They chorused out in union. Let me call roll and we can have introductions, huh? I hope I have a good year from all of you. Naruto zoned out as Iruka started to call roll. His mind drifting to more important things. He had 2 years before the Uchiha was wiped out. 2 years, and he had no clue as to what the hell he was going to do. Naruto. He snapped as he heard his name yelled accompanied by the sinkers of his classmates. Sorry sensei. I was daydreaming, Iruka looked annoyed. Pay attention Naruto, don't make it a habit of yours. Lest you fail, or others pick up such habits as well. Iruka stared him down, brown eyes staring into blue. He remembered this. He almost smiled, almost. But instead he stared, boring into the man's soul with his own blue eyes. Watching, unblinking, then suddenly, Iruka looked away. Hi, sensei, I won't let it happen again. He smiled, then frowned as he watched Iruka flinch. He zoned out once more. But not as deeply. Beneath of your desks is a book. These books are a class set provided to each student that goes to the academy on a yearly basis. As you age and progress, you'll get a new one every year. You should take care of these. They will contain homework and assignments, and losing or damaging your textbook is no excuse for not completing your assignments. Now, let's get started with today's lesson. It's simple. Read the first chapter. It's simple. After that we'll have a short chat, and go outside to do some exercises. How do that sound? Naruto stopped for a moment to cast a casual glance at his book. Smiled when he realized it was pathetically easy, then re-shifted his thoughts back to his own problems. Right now the greatest of his efforts would be attempting to deal with the Uchiha clan. 2 years seemed a while away, yet it wasn't. It'd be here before he realized it. Should he attempt to thwart it? No. That was stupid. The Uchiha were planning a coup. He'd have to find a way to stop the coup. Keep the clan from being subsequently persecuted, all the while trapped in the body of a 6-year-old. He wouldn't be able to save them, and even if he could. Naruto. He snapped his attention back to the room. You're supposed to be reading the first chapter. He blinked for a moment. He'd forgotten how much of an Iruka had been before he started liking him. I already know the material, sensei. Do you? Hi. Fine. Iruka smiled. What are the ninja ranks within the village? Genin, Chunin, Special Junin, Junin, and Anbu. Naruto frowned. Should he even be revealing this much? He knew things he wasn't supposed to. At least not as a 6-year-old. But it was too late now, wasn't it? What's the difference between a Special Junin and a Junin? A Junin passes the Junin exams. A Special Junin is promoted due. He paused for a moment. How to word it? His vocabulary couldn't be too advanced, it would red flags and draw attention to him. But then, we're waiting, Naruto. Special Junin are promoted because they have skills. Another pause to find the right words. Skills in the right areas, like the medic nin. Most medic nin are promoted to Special Junin after reaching Chunin because they are skilled medics and can heal the wounded. They have skills that would place them in the Junin skill range, but it's specialized. Iruka was quiet. The classroom likewise. Naruto stared up at him, blue staring into brown once more. Very good, Naruto-kun. It seems you do know the material contained for this chapter. I'll expect the same performance from you from now on. For an instant Naruto was worried. He was being careless already. The class went on, and after an hour Iruka started to lecture. Quickly going over points as he strived to cram as much of the class's experience he could in a single day. Going over talking points through the lecture before finally declaring it was time to leave the room. Once everyone was outside, Iruka decided to speak. Every day we'll spend some time outside. He pointed at various targets. Some were human-shaped, others were simple targets, large and circular with big red and white concentric rings that got progressively smaller. Today will be target practice. Tomorrow we will test your physical capabilities and see exactly how we're going to rank you. Kiba raised a hand. Yes, what's your name again? He blushed and the children laughed. Kiba. My name is Kiba, Iruka-sensei. Thank you, Kiba-kun. What's your question? We'll be ranked. Yes. Throughout your next few years your academic and physical performance will be scored and ranked. These rankings will be used to help us decide team placements when you graduate. Now, he pulled a scroll from his vest. Spreading it on the floor, and running a bloody thumb over it, a set of kunai appeared in a puff of smoke. Let's go over safety procedures, and how to handle these properly. Wouldn't want any accidents, would we? Iruka let out a small chuckle and rubbed a hand behind his head. It was at that point that Naruto zoned out once more. Over the years he'd forgotten just how mind-numbingly boring most of the academy could be. Now that he knew all the things it would teach over the next few years, it would be even more so. He sighed, a frown forming on his face. He was useless as he was now, and would be for quite a few more years. It didn't help that he seemed to be recklessly doing things without thinking. As a Jinchuriki he would without a doubt be watched. His words analyzed, his actions thought over. No doubt the interaction with Iruka earlier this morning would be told to the Sandaime. If he started acting differently, stupidly, he didn't know what would happen. But, then again, did he want to keep the time stream as it was? He'd come back to change things. Why not start off right away? Why not prove himself as someone skilled and talented enough to warrant everyone's respect from the get-go? Why not place himself as someone Sasuke would respect, listen to, befriend? Someone Sakura could lean on. Someone Ji-san could be proud of from the get-go. What was the point of shearing away the veil of time if you didn't use the opportunity to completely change things? But then, he needed to be sure of certain events. The Uchiha had to die. He'd stay away from them, as far as he could, at least until after the massacre. Naruto, Would you like to go first? He heard the classes snickering again and looked around slightly confused. Uruka had a kunai in hand. Blade first, so he could easily grab it. He grabbed the handle and waited for the man to release it before he pulled. Uruka seemed surprised then smiled. It seems you were paying attention, that's good. Why don't you try hitting the circular targets? It's not expected of you to hit the bullseye the first time. Just try to hit it in general, okay? I'll make suggestions to help you, okay? He looked around for a moment. The other students' eyes were glued on him, watching intently to see how well he would do. Most notable was Sasuke. His onyx eyes seemed to boring into his body. Watching intently with anticipation, a small smile on his face. Naruto almost laughed, he looked so innocent. He turned his attention back to the kunai. They were small, and lighter than normal. The sides were slightly dulled, though the tip was still razor sharp. In the midday fire country sun they gleamed. He hefted them, to get a sense of balance. There were 5 targets and 10 kunai. He grinned. Threw the first kunai with a swing of his arm and a flick of his wrist. It sailed past the target and he heard the chuckles of his classmates behind him. They were lighter than he was used to, not too much so, but still. That throw had been way over what he had estimated. He went to grab another kunai, and this time grinned. He hefted it once more, and with a flick of his wrist, sent it flying. It hit. Not a bull's eye, but it was a second ring. He smirked as he heard the other kids fall silent. He picked up 2 more and threw those. The first hit the third inner ring, and the fourth the bull's eye. Then he picked up the remaining 6 and struck home. Every single time. The class was silent. Gee, good job, Naruto-kun. He bowed with a small smile on his lips. Thanks, Uruka-sensei. He exclaimed at the man in a slightly louder tone than normal. He smiled as he looked at the looks on the other children's faces. XXX starting small 4x. Lunch came and Naruto sat at one of the tables alone. Hungry. The small grassy field was filled with kids of all ages, running around and interacting with one another. His blue eyes cast around, and already he could see the old groups from his childhood start to consolidate. Choji and Shikamaru were sitting beneath a tree watching clouds while the larger boy snacked on both their lunches. Oh God, he was so hungry. He sighed, and placed his forehead down on the lunch table. He'd forgotten his lunch at the orphanage, in the sudden rush of his technique actually working, and him actually passing through the channels of time to the past. Now he hungry, so goddamn hungry. His stomach growled. Hey. He raised his head, small hands coming up to block the blaring light of the noonday sun. The sun blacked out the figure before him, but, after a few seconds he could finally see. It was Sasuke. Short, little, almost adorable Sasuke. With a timid look on his face, and a bento box in hand. Blue shirt, and short white khakis. His hair falling to either side of his head, though the early signs of his strange hairstyle could already be seen. Hey. A pregnant pause filled the air for a moment. This didn't happen last time. What should he do? What should he do? He made a decision. Want to sit with me? Sasuke smiled, and sat almost immediately. So, his voice was so high-pitched compared to what he remembered. You're Sasuke, right? Yeah, I'm Naruto. Good to meet ya. He reached out a hand and the other boy seemed startled, but then, with some hesitation, Sasuke extended his hand and the two shook hands. What are your hobbies? Naruto had a feeling he'd have to drive most if not all of this conversation himself. Well, I like to train. Especially with my Aniki. I like to spend time with my aunt and uncle as well. Those aren't hobbies. Well, what are yours then? Sasuke asked. His voice sounded indignant. I like, he couldn't remember anything he did at this age other than go to the academy. I guess I don't have any hobbies either. He blushed in embarrassment and a small smile appeared on the other boy's face. Well, what do you like to do? Well, suddenly there was a shout. Naruto turned to the source. It was another Uchiha, this one 3 or 4 years their senior. Naruto arched an eyebrow at the teen. He didn't remember much about the Uchiha, and from what he could, this kid seemed to fit the bill. Tall, pale, with a sharp yet somewhat squared jaw. Dark brown hair and a white shirt. Black short khakis and a ninja holster on his leg. Naruto smirked. He'd forgotten about the whole, "don't talk to the demon brat" thing. That might get annoying in the future as he tried to influence things in the small way he could. When he was a child he would have cared more that he was ignored. Now though, now he didn't care, and most importantly he knew with enough time everyone would eventually come around to his point of view and or side. So when the nameless Uchiha came over, shouting how, Sasuke-sama, shouldn't associate with such trash, he kept a small smile on his lips. As the kid forcibly dragged Sasuke away, Naruto waved and smiled. "It was nice talking to you while I could, Sasuke. Maybe we can talk more later." Then he was alone. God damn it, he was hungry. XXX starting small XXX. The evening came and with it the end of the school day. Naruto stood outside the academy waiting for what he wasn't sure and watching the kids slowly parade about until their parents came to retrieve them. He cast a look at the blue sky above that was slowly transitioning to a deep orange. He should head back to the orphanage. But his memories of that place were far from fond. So for a few more minutes he'd stay here. He looked around. Sasuke was still here. "Hey Sasuke." He jogged over in a light, yet fast, pace. "Hello. You waiting for your parents to come and get you?" "Yes, I'm waiting for my mom. My dad is the police chief for the Konoha police force, so he can't come and pick me up." "Cool." He smiled at Sasuke. "Are you waiting for your parents?" "No, I'm an orphan. I'm supposed to walk back to the orphanage with some older kids after classes, but they left without me. So I'm here until I'm ready to go home." Sasuke seemed shocked, then smiled apologetically. "Sorry. About at lunch. I don't know what that was about." Naruto laughed it off, a wide-toothed grin birthing on his face. "Don't worry about it. I'm used to it. Sasuke-kun, you made a new friend already." Naruto turned to the voice. It was a woman. A tall woman at about 5'8", with black hair and pale soft skin. She smiled down at them. It was a soft motherly smile, one of triumph, the smile of a mother whose words had come true. "Ka-chan. This is Naruto, he's in my class." Naruto bowed deep at the Uchiha matriarch. "Hello, Uchiha-san. And so polite too. And adorable. See Sasuke-kun, I told you you'd make friends no problem." "Ka-chan," Sasuke moaned. Naruto chuckled. He'd never seen Sasuke pout before, and being 6 made it all the more enjoyable. "Naruto-kun, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to go take little Sasuke-kun away from you for now. We've got to go home for now. Hopefully see you tomorrow." "Of course, Uchiha-san." She smiled at him, grabbed Sasuke's hand and pulled him away. XXX starting small XXX. The orphanage loomed overhead like a monolith. He'd mostly forgotten about this place. But as he stood before it, the memories flooded back. His small room in the back wing, the mean bullying children, the uncaring matron. He scowled. He hated this place. He remembered seeing this place leveled after Pain's attack and feeling happy that this place had been reduced to rubble. Then he'd felt immediately guilty as he carelessly tossed aside the ruined home of so many orphans. He sighed and walked in through the too large wooden door. "Hey there, shrimp." He turned to the sound of the voice. It was another kid, about 2 or 3 years older than him. Akashi. His memories of the boy were vague, too. This was so long ago. Dressed in a black shirt and long tan pants, Akashi was a little over a foot taller than him. With curly brown hair that seemed to twist in and around itself more than anything. Brown eyes set in a small chubby face. He ignored him, and started to walk to what he thought was his room. Akashi got in the way. "Where you going, shrimp?" "To my room." That just seemed to make him angry. So you got a mouth on you, shrimp. What did I tell you about that mouth of yours? He ignored him and tried to move on. Akashi pushed him to the ground, then sent a right hook into his jaw. Naruto got up, a snarl on his face. When he was 6, he was too weak to do anything when this bully chose him as his victim. When he was 6, he wasn't a trained ninja and his body was weak. But now he was a trained ninja, and even if his body was weak, he still knew about fighting like one. His foot drove into Akashi's crotch. The boy crumpled and his foot came down on his head. The other orphans stopped. He drove his foot down a second time, and a third time. A fourth and fifth. A sixth, and Akashi stopped moving. His blood was pooling on the floor, leaving from his mouth and nose. As the rage left him, he looked on in horror. If he wasn't noticed today, then this would really draw attention. God damn it. He couldn't sleep that night. As he lay in his bed, his mind reeled, going over again and again what had happened that day. What had happened a mere few hours before. He knew better. He knew better. He lay in bed, his eyes wide open. Blue eyes staring into the dark nothingness of his bare room. Mentally, he knew not to attack. His mind told him not to attack. And yet when Akashi had pushed him, when the larger boy had done what, as he remembered, countless other older, bigger boys had done before, Naruto had snapped. His foot had lashed out, and before he knew it, Akashi lay on the ground, a small puddle of blood pooling beneath his unconscious form. He sighed, and then with a grunt, swung his feet over the side of his bed. The cantankerous old matron had been furious. Her wrinkled face, just as deceivingly grandmotherly as he had remembered, warping into one of disdain. Her shrill voice shrieking at him for hurting poor Akashi. Once more he had felt rage fill him, but this time he could control it. This time it wasn't the mind-numbing fury, though it still made his blood boil. He remembered telling her numerous times about the bullies. About Akashi and his gang of cronies. About the shoving, and the beatings, and the name-calling. Yet, nothing had happened, it hadn't stopped, and after he told, it seemed to get worse. With his feet on the ground, he started to quickly shuffle his way towards the kitchen. She'd sent him to bed without dinner as punishment, and he could feel his stomach rumbling for food. After sneaking down the stairs, and into the small side hall, he was in the kitchen. He walked to the fridge, pulled it open and took out an apple. Then he walked to the cupboard and pulled it open. He smiled when he saw a packet of ramen. He read it to see the flavor. At first, it seemed like glyphs for a few seconds, hard to comprehend and fully understand before becoming legible. Miso. He smiled. Miso was his favorite. Walking back to the cupboard, he pulled out a tea kettle and a small towel used to wipe up spills. He filled up the kettle with water, set the towel atop it to hit its screech, and set it to boil. Then he sat and waited. He had an idea, though he wasn't too sure on how valid it was. He was an adult in mind, but as a child, his body reacted to things as children should. With extreme bouts of emotion. Mood swings would be constant for him. He'd have to start meditating again, in an attempt to gain control of the raging hormones that now flooded his mind. With a crunch, he took a bite of his apple. He couldn't afford any more incidents like earlier this evening. He could feel the faint traces of Anbu watching him where he hadn't before. No doubt Ji-san had already been informed about both events at school and at the orphanage. The result was that his new minders were meant to keep a watch on him, and keep him out of further trouble. More bites of the sweet red fruit, spilling its juice into his mouth. He heard the muted shriek of the kettle and smiled. He finished the last bites of the apple and threw it away. Taking the cup of instant ramen and pouring the water inside, he waited the 3 minutes for it to boil. When it was done, he ate, and then threw the cup of ramen away as well, making sure to bury it beneath other trash to hide the evidence. Then, when he was finished, he put the kettle and the rag away. What to do now? The stars, he heard himself say. They look pretty tonight. Maybe he'd go stargazing. XXX starting small 4x. Uzumaki-san shows incredible prowess for his first day at the academy. He seemed to be able to follow a lesson, or discussion with only half his attention on said subject at the time. What his mind was occupied with I am unsure. He shows startling mental comprehension abilities for one of his age, though to what extent is yet unknown as standardized tests have not yet been deployed to test the student's capabilities, though he is without a doubt sure to score incredibly high. Not only that, but Uzumaki-san shows an inherent capability to learn things quickly. With the kunai throwing exercise, he not only managed to score an exceptionally high score for one of his age 10 out of 12 hits, but he managed to do so after only throwing a kunai 3 times to judge its weight and capabilities. Uzumaki-san shows inherent qualities of genius. It is suggested that special attention be paid attention to him in order to make sure he receives the training he deserves. The elderly Cage gave a small smile as he read through the report. It would seem genius was inheritable, especially if both of one's parents were geniuses. Perhaps, he should pay the boy a visit. He hadn't seen the lad since he was 5. Nearly a year, no doubt the boy had forgotten him. But, with the boy entering the academy, and the incident that had happened just earlier that evening, a visit would seem warranted. He took his pipe from a small pocket he kept in his vest. Filled it with the sweet-tasting strawberry tobacco his wife had bought for him shortly before her death so many years before, and lit it. He took a deep puff of it and smiled. Then he picked up the second report. Report 11 CGLD. Reporting Unit. Codename Giraffe. It should be noted that Akashi-kun has been reprimanded before for bullying both his peers and others younger than himself. It should also be noted that while the orphanage matron has helped put a stop to Akashi's bullying of other orphans, Uzumaki-kun's torment seemed to continue. It would seem that the orphanage made it clear that Akashi-kun was to do as he wished with Uzumaki-kun as long as the others were left alone. From what we could gather from the incident, it appears Akashi-kun was the instigator, choosing to assault Uzumaki-kun when Uzumaki-kun simply wished to be left alone. The resulting fight was quick, if somewhat brutal. After Akashi-kun's initial attack on Uzumaki-kun, Uzumaki went on the assault, leaving Akashi-kun with a concussion, multiple abrasions, a broken nose, and a fractured rib. From what we have gathered from the other orphans, and Akashi-kun, Uzumaki seemed unhesitant in his assault, doing his best to quickly down his larger opponent before going on a short, but brutal, assault. It should be noted Uzumaki-san seems to show inherent fighting capabilities, if not a lack of hesitance to finish a downed opponent. The elderly Cage frowned a bit. While children fought, and sometimes brutally so, they tended to be hesitant of fighting one another, despite their bolstering. Naruto-kun's lack of hesitance to finish a downed opponent was not normal. He would, without a doubt, be seeing young Naruto-kun tomorrow morning. He pulled out a crystal ball and charged a small amount of chakra through it. He concentrated, and then an image of a small boy laying in a forest appeared before him. He frowned. Children shouldn't be disappearing into the night by themselves, especially not children containing biju. He made a hand sign and an Anbu appeared before him. Owl, get to Squad 4 and ask them why young Naruto-kun is outside at 11 at night. A swoosh of wind and the Anbu disappeared. The elderly Cage leaned back in his seat, took a long deep inhale of his tobacco. Giraffe, make me some tea please. Owl reappeared in a flurry of wind and smoke. Report. It would appear Uzumaki-kun snuck out after stealthily grabbing himself a meal. Why would he need to grab himself a meal? Has the matron not been feeding him properly? It would appear that as punishment he was sent to bed without dinner. From what she has gathered, this is slandered punishment for him, and he is often punished. Usually for minor offenses. He seems to be malnourished from this as a result. The elderly Cage frowned, then took a deep, long inhale of the smoke in his pipe. You know, Owl, I've had children of my own. And, as I'm aware, You two have children. He stopped for a moment, his gaze peering into the Anbu's face. Tell me what you think of a child being mistreated under the guise of punishment. It's an injustice, Hokage-sama. A blight upon the face of the world, and our village. Children should be treated like treasures. I want all appointments for tomorrow morning rescheduled either to the day after tomorrow, or late in the evening. If they can reschedule, offer them sincerest apologies, and a promise give them priority when they have a more convenient time for us to meet. Hi, Hokage-sama. XXX starting small XXX. He woke up in cold wet water. With a groan he stumbled to his feet to wearily look around. He was in a sewer he knew too well. The dark wet place smelled with the rank smell of blood. Thick pipes, each red and blue, lined the wall, though the red pipes continually leaked into their blue counterparts. The water level rose up to his waist. It was higher than he remembered, or maybe it was because he was a child now. With some concentration he rose to the top of the water and started his slow walk towards the home of his closest friend. That's if you could call the sewer prison a home, and the massive demon fox he occasionally got along with, a friend. After a few minutes he appeared before the massive cage. The bars towered over his head, massive steel pillars that went higher than he could see. The gate was closed, though the seal that held it was now gone. He smiled. Kurama. There was no response. He frowned, went closer to the bars and peered into their dark depths. A claw hand tried to slam down on his head, and he barely managed to get back in time. His small form went leaping backwards, sending his golden hair flying and his cloth swaying in the wind of his mind. He scowled when he heard the laughter of the fox echo throughout his mind. You're so tiny now, I couldn't help myself. So you tried to kill me. What if it had failed and I hadn't managed to come back? What if it was just child me? It wasn't though. So your questions are moot. So, I can't believe you actually managed to pull it off, or they even let you do it, but with your luck, I'm not too surprised. Naruto smiled at the fox. I told you it would work. I didn't think it wouldn't. I just believed you would find some way to it up and we'd end up too far back or not far back enough. And, looking at your stature, I was right. The fox smiled at him. Large red eyes staring down, and wide man-sized teeth shining against the deep black of his cell. Naruto laughed, then placed a hand behind his hand in embarrassment. I traveled through time, cut me a break, man. I don't exactly have experience with it, so, yeah. Though I think this time might be better than we originally planned. This gives us 6 more years to try to change things in little ways. If you say so. I'm worried though. The fox raised an eyebrow in surprise. You worried? It laughed a bit, its deep voice echoing throughout the cavernous sewers of his mind. What for? I'm not acting like myself, well, my older self anyways. Today I got in a fight. That seems just like you. No, I mean, I knew I had to ignore the kid. Just walk on and go by, but when he pushed me I lost it. I haven't been that angry that fast in years. I don't know what's going on. I knew I shouldn't have done it. Yet I did anyway. That's not like me. I'm not human, and my knowledge of human emotions and what affects them are limited. I don't think, or feel, like you. I'm made out of chakra after all. The chemical reactions that affect you, well, they don't affect something like me at all. Naruto frowned and then sat down. He ran a palm through the water beneath him, sending ripples in all directions. He looked back up at the fox, then back at the water. So, have your plans changed? I mean, the original plan was to wait around a few years for Obito to reveal himself, and try keep Sasuke around if we could. You know, hearing it from you, it wasn't really too well defined now that I think about it. Neither of us are one for planning. The fox was quite. What about the Uchiha? I can't do anything about the Uchiha. I'm too small, too weak. Just useless in general. And if I could do anything, then what? Stop the Uchiha massacre and have a civil war break out that tears apart Konoha. Tell people I'm from the future, prove it, and they get mind raped for information about the future. I started trying to befriend Sasuke today, and that's the only thing to do. Try to change Sasuke, or at least, take care of him, if he tries to pull the same stunts he did last time. I mean, I can't do anything. He frowned, then let out a long, deep sigh. I'm still contemplating whether I should try to keep things the same, or just go whole hog and say, it, to the whole thing. Go for it. If you're willing to pull back the veil of time and space, why walk on eggshells? Stop acting like a newborn kid afraid of his own tail. The fox was right. He'd come this far, why hold back? He'd go all in. Damn the consequences, he'd change things to how he thought they ought to go. XXX staring small XXX. He woke up to the old matron towering over him, a scowl on her face. She looked at the open window in his room, then back at him. From where he lay he could see the deep-set wrinkles, the silver hair slowly turning a stark white, the deep, cracked lines in her face. She sneered at him, showing white teeth against red gums. Get up, boy, and get ready. The Hokage is coming to see you this morning. Hurry. She looked at the window one more time. And keep that window closed at night, you'll let out all the cold air. She went to his closet, pulled out a white t-shirt and small brown khakis, and then tossed them on his bed along with a comb. Put these on after you bathe yourself. Make sure to comb your hair too, it's a rat's nest. With that she shuffled out of his room. He moved into the hallway and made his way for the bathroom. His door was the furthest from the bathroom, meaning as a child he was often bathing with lukewarm or cold water. He walked in. 30 minutes later he left the bathroom freshly bathed, his teeth brushed, and the clothing she'd given him on. He combed his wet hair then went downstairs. The matron was waiting, and so was the old man. The old man seemed massive. Like a giant he seemed to tower over him. The presence of the elderly Cage woke up emotions and memories long since buried. For a moment he thought he was going to lose it. He felt sorrow swell in his chest, felt his eyes water, his body quiver in pain. Then he reeled it in, grabbing hold of those emotions and bolting them down. He was better than this, better than losing control in front of this man. He took one deep, long breath. Hello, Hokage-sama. The old man seemed surprised, then smiled a bit wider. He looked at the orphanage matron, and she quickly shuffled away. He hid a snicker. Hello there, Naruto-kun. The old man extended a hand, and Naruto complied with a hand of his own. Hokage-sama, I'm not sure if this will come off rude, but can I ask why you want to speak with me? Once again the Hokage seemed surprised, then mildly pleased. I received some reports that said you displayed quite a bit of talent yesterday. I enjoy speaking with the possible talents, and the fact that you're an orphan piqued my interests quite a bit more. Tell me, Naruto-kun, have you eaten breakfast yet? No. Then why don't we walk to a restaurant I know? It serves rather good tea, maybe we can get to know each other better. So, how are you doing, Naruto-kun? The old man's words echoed throughout the room. The restaurant was small and quiet. The waiters bustled from place to place, setting tables and preparing for the day. It was spacious, square-shaped and centered facing inwards towards a large central garden. The dawn sun shined down upon the hardwood bamboo floor, and the rich smells of tea filled the air. Naruto smiled a small smile at him. Good. I heard you showed a rather promising amount of talent yesterday. That's good to hear. Naruto looked at the old man. This was strange. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not for another year, the Anbu weren't supposed to be watching him for another 2. He'd been here for less than a day and already he'd changed things. And what was the old man playing it with this? Why meet with him at all? Why not just watch and wait? Thank you. Yes, the old man was quiet for a moment, he was watching him, studying him, and Naruto didn't know how to feel about it. Those deep pools of brown staring into his own sky blue. How was he supposed to act? Like a child. How do you like the orphanage, Naruto-kun? He was quite. This was a chance. It took a year for him to get out of the orphanage after the old man met him. Now, this was a chance he couldn't let up. He'd take it. I don't like it. The kids are mean and no one wants to play with me. The matron is a cantankerous old hag. He watched the old man raise an eyebrow in amusement. And when I'm hungry and tell her, she says I'm lying and greedy. But I'm not. I really am hungry. He was quiet for a moment and looked down into the cup of rich dark tea. The old man took a sip of his, sighed in contentment and smiled at him. Continue please. The kids are mean. They bully me all the time, and when I tell the matron she doesn't do anything about it, but when I hit them back I get punished. I get punished all the time, even for things I didn't do. He pouted. My room's small and cold too. He frowned as he heard his own voice. So childish. Those problems were so childish. Yet, looking up at old man, he could see his soft brown eyes hardening. You don't like it there. Not at all. How would you feel with your own apartment? It might be lonely, but I'll have people check in on you every week to cook your meals and help you out. My own apartment. Like, just for me. The old man smiled, his wrinkled face warping into a wide-toothed smile. Yes, as well as a small stipend for you to spend on meals, or clothes, toys, ninja tools. Whatever it is you fancy. That sounds nice. Nice. Yeah. Naruto finished the last of his tea and stood up. Nice. He looked at the clock. It was almost 8 now. The academy would be starting soon. The academy's about to start. You can tell time. He seemed surprised, startled even. Naruto internally cursed. 6-year-old children weren't supposed to be able to tell time, at least not until they'd spent some time in an educational facility. Yeah, you're just full of surprises, Naruto-kun. Come then. He smiled down at him and Naruto beamed back up. Let's get you to the academy. Naruto got up. He smiled at the elderly Kage, bright white teeth beaming in pride, and the old man responded in kind. As they left the tea place, the old man held out his hand. Naruto stared at it for a moment, realized what the old man wanted and placed a hand in his. His hand was engulfed by the rough calloused palms of the old man. Then they started to walk and his mind went elsewhere. XXX Sarutobi XXX. The elderly Kage looked down at his young ward as they walked. It was obvious that the boy before him was a genius, prodigy much like the hegemony he descended from. The blonde child was brilliant. He spoke with the clear intent of any adult, and beneath those bright blue eyes was obvious intelligence. Calculating intelligence. The innocent child was far more aware of the world than he made himself appear. Sarutobi looked around. He frowned when he saw the disapproving glances, the fear, the hatred in the eyes of his people as they watched him and Naruto walk along. He looked at the boy, and realized Naruto couldn't care less. The boy was occupied in his own thoughts. He was either ignorant of the looks, or just didn't care. It was likely the latter more than the former. He was very much like his father though. That blonde hair, those blue eyes, and now that genius intelligence. No doubt it wouldn't take too long for people to start putting the pieces together. He stopped for a moment when he realized what he had just said. People would soon start asking exactly who Uzumaki Naruto's parents was. It likely wouldn't take too long for them figure it out as well. He cursed beneath his breath. He'd have to take actions, hide things, collude things, and that in itself would give answers to people smart enough to see them. Ojiazan. He looked down at the small blonde holding his hand. Apparently whatever had had the boy occupied no longer did so. He smiled down at the child, masking his own annoyance and worry. Yes, Naruto-kun. Is something wrong? Attentive child. No, not at all Naruto-kun, I was simply absorbed in my own thoughts. Okay. The boy beamed back up at him. The Kage looked back around one more time. He frowned. Genius children. He'd dealt with genius children nearly all his life. His students, the Sannin, all of them had been geniuses. His son, Minato, Kakashi, Orochimaru. So many brilliant minds, such potential, wasted. Konoha bred geniuses, though it didn't seem to be able to keep them for long. A genius child, too much like his father. A village filled with ignorant people filled with fear and hatred. A child who without a doubt already knew of his village's animosity towards him. He frowned. Another failure waiting to happen. They walked on in silence. After a few moments the wide gates of the academy appeared. Ji-san, we're here. It would seem so, Naruto-kun. XXX Sasuke XXX. Naruto was strange, Sasuke decided. But in a good way. He's obviously smart, brilliant really. Like Ni-san, a genius amongst a crowd of normal people. But unlike Ni-san, Naruto wasn't so drear, so depressed. Yesterday was just a glimpse into Uzumaki Naruto. Today he got to see more. Naruto was fast. He could run for seemingly forever. 30 laps around the academy was nothing to him, while the rest of the kids were passing out on the ground, gasping for breath. Naruto was quick. He could run through the academy training course in less than a minute and a half, while it took him 5. Naruto was smart. He could follow the lesson without really paying attention to it at all. Naruto was strange. He was smart, he was fast, and a genius. He had no reason to pick Sasuke as his friend, but deep down, Sasuke was happy Naruto did. So, all I'm saying is Mizuki-sensei's A. Sasuke coughed up his rice. What? He's A. Naruto proclaimed. His face was serious, and his brows were furrowed. It was obvious to Sasuke that this was a serious issue for his new lunch buddy. Idly he wondered why his mother seemingly wanted him to associate with the, well, he wasn't an idiot, but he was somewhat lewd. What makes you say that? During taijutsu practice he paired all the clan kids against non-clan kids. Did he? Yes. Naruto raised an appraising eyebrow at him. He did. Me and you are one example, right? Sasuke nodded as he attempted to follow along. The fight between me and you was more or less a tie. That's because you're trained, and likely have been training since you could walk in taijutsu, right? He had in fact been doing taijutsu practice as far back as he could remember. And yet, he cast one more look at Naruto. How much taijutsu practice have you had? Huh? How much taijutsu practice have you had? The boy looked down, took a rice ball from Sasuke's bento and took a bite. Sasuke raised an eyebrow and Naruto raised one back. He forgot about it. He had a feeling trying to deal with it would be pointless. Naruto smiled at his resignation. None. I've been in fights before though. Sasuke nodded, and took another bite of rice. So as I was saying, it's not exactly fair or even growth productive. Placing someone who doesn't have any idea how to fight against someone who's been training in it since they can walk sets an expectation of pain, and sets the learning curve a little too high. Naruto stopped for a moment to think. He cast a glance towards the wooded area of the academy training grounds. It was so fast Sasuke almost missed it. It make it look like the clan kids with training are naturally better than non-clan kids without. It's unfair. The first year of the academy is nothing but evaluations. It's to teach us the basics and see how well we perform. He's messing with those results. Sasuke was quiet, a horrified look on his face. That's unfair. See. Naruto smiled at him, a wide devious smile. He's being a. Sasuke frowned. A look of displeasure came upon his face. You have something planned, don't you? No. But give me some time and I'll figure something out. Sasuke groaned, looked one more time at Naruto and sighed. I'm not sure if I want to be involved in anything you have planned. Don't worry. I'm sure whatever I come up with won't be too bad. But I don't want to be involved at all. Did you say something? He would have responded but the lunch bell rung and they had to return to class. XXX Naruto XXX. They were still following him, his new watchers and guards. He let out a sigh of annoyance, but still he remained on his path. Naruto cast his blue eyes down to the small silver key in his hand. He smiled though, and gripped it firmer. The building appeared before him as he walked. It was just like he remembered it before it was demolished in Pain's attack. 3 stories high, and circular in shape. From here he could see the faded pink coat of paint that had once been red. He could see the rich red tiles too, faded as well, and bleached from the sun. He couldn't contain his excitement as he let out a quick yelp and ran for the apartment building. He got to the entrance, passed through the main office building and gave a casual wave to the landlord. He was about to go past him when he remembered he wasn't supposed to know where his apartment was. He stopped, turned to the man and smiled. He walked up to the counter, and stood on his toes to peer over it. The landlord looked down, his glasses sliding off his face and an inquisitive look appearing on his face. "Hi. Yes, little boy," Naruto huffed in annoyance. He hadn't been called a boy in years, but then again, he was a child. "I'm looking for." He stopped, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the small square of paper the Anbu in the giraffe mask had given to him on his way to the orphanage. Apartment 29C. The landlord gave him a once-over, yawned, and grabbed a bottle of water from behind his desk. He took a deep gulp, wiped his mouth and sighed in content. The apartment building has 3 stories. The ground level is A, the second level is B, and the top level is C. 29C is on the top level. To the furthest right. Thanks. He grabbed the sheet of paper off of the landlord's desk and headed for his room. It wasn't the same apartment. In fact, this one was a little better. The paint seemed new, the floor was freshly polished and all the furniture seemed new rather than second-hand. And best of all, it seemed they'd slightly modified it to fit a child's stature. There were stools of varying heights sitting neatly against the kitchen wall. The door knobs seemed smaller, easier to grip with smaller hands. He smiled and then jumped a bit in excitement. In the center of the apartment was a decent-sized table, not huge but not small either. On top of it was a note. He grabbed it and quickly scanned through it. To Naruto-kun. "This apartment it yours, Naruto-kun, I hope you like it. In the mornings and evenings bento boxes with healthy meals will be ready for you. A bento box for lunch will also be ready for you in the morning. A monthly stipend, a small amount of money, will be provided for you every month. Use this to buy clothing, ninja tools, small meals on the go, or even toys if you wish. It's yours to spend as you deem fit, though I do warn if it seems like you're spending it unwisely it will be lessened and you'll be forced to take some lessons on money management. The apartment has new furniture, and the walls are freshly painted. Take any problems you have to the building's landlord as soon as possible. He will deal with them, don't put it off for too long or a small issue might turn into a big issue. In the closet hall is a small set of ninja supplies to start you off at the academy. The dresser in your bedroom has your clothing from the orphanage. The bathroom has soap and a new toothbrush for you. Remember, hygiene is important, Naruto-kun. Don't skimp on it. I hope this serves you well, Naruto-kun. Sarutobi Hiruzen Sandaime Hokage. Naruto put the letter down, and went to his room. A small twin-sized bed was sat in the corner. He collapsed face first into it with a sigh. The past 2 days had been tiring. The academy was boring, long and arduous. Most of the children in his class were just that, children, unbearable little monsters who grated on his nerves. Iruka-sensei was being a because he didn't know better, and Mizuki was being a worse one because, well, he was Mizuki. Sasuke was amicable so far. But he didn't know how long that would last, Naruto sighed. So many options. So many choices. He had to talk with Kurama. He closed his eyes, slowed his breathing, and fell into the cage dwelling that his one friend lived in. The Kyuubi was there, his gargantuan form laying down behind his massive cage. His large red eyes stared down. You're back. I am. Why? I'm lonely. Of course. So, how goes changing the future? I've got an apartment now, the old man's taken interest in me, and Sasuke now eats lunch with me, that's a thing. So. Kurama laughed, his voice filling his mind's space, and reverberating off the walls. Then he was quiet and serious. Does the village bother you? No, I'm used to it. Besides, I have you and I know I'll be able to make friends in the future, so that desperation I felt, that need to belong, to be acknowledged, it's not there. Good. Naruto smiled and the Kyuubi did also in response. They settled down into silence, enjoying each other's company. All the while, the world around Uzumaki Naruto moved. It inched forward 1 second at a time. 1 moment, 1 second, ever forward in time and space. He dashed forward and jumped, twisting his leg and spinning in an arc and driving it down in an overhead kick. Sasuke blocked it, but he expected that, and used his momentum against him. He grabbed Sasuke's arm as he came down, pulled him to the ground and drove a fist into his stomach. It was a dirty move, he smiled when it worked, pulled his feet in, and drove a kick into Sasuke's stomach. Sasuke went flying off of him, and Naruto stood up in triumph. Time. He turned to Iruka-sensei, raised an eyebrow in anticipation, and waited. Congratulations, Naruto-kun. Your first victory over Sasuke-kun, you've come far in the past month. The rest of the class was silent. They would be, of course. The fight between him and Sasuke was brutal, for academy students at least, because blood had been drawn at least once. They watched on, saying nothing, like they had done every time he and Sasuke had spared over the past few months. He grunted, stretched his aching body and limped over to Sasuke. That last kick had been angled wrong, and he'd pulled something. Come on, let's get to the infirmary. Your face is leaking everywhere. He joked lightly and Sasuke smiled. Naruto extended his hand, Sasuke grabbed it and with a grunt they stood up and started to limp to the infirmary, leaning on one another for support. Now, Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, why don't you two come on over here and spar? Maybe not as enthusiastically as Naruto and Sasuke-kun though. Iruka's voice faded as Sasuke and Naruto got closer to the infirmary. As they limped through the halls, Naruto turned to his friend and grinned. I beat your. It only took you 15 spars to do it. Who'd have thought? Naruto laughed and continued walking. For a genius, you act pretty stupid. He pouted at Sasuke. I can see your attacks clear enough, it's just, I can't react fast enough. So when you get faster, you'll be beating me all of a sudden. Sasuke smirked at him. I doubt it. Class rankings start tomorrow. Do they? You ready to bask in my shadow, Sasuke? Revel beneath my might. Don't be so proud of yourself, Naruto, I have a chance at that too. I know, that'll make the look on your face all the better when I beat you for it. Naruto looked at Sasuke and smirked. A wide-toothed grin appeared on his face. Of all the students in his class, Sasuke was his favorite. For a 6-year-old he was sharp, and particularly mature for his age. While he seemed incapable of being able to connect with kids his age, because by default he wasn't a child, Sasuke seemed to be just the right blend of mature enough to be tolerable, but still childish enough that spending time with him was enjoyable, and tolerate his own childlike nature. Over the past month he'd learned some things. The academy was far more boring than anything he'd ever imagined. Especially as an adult. The lessons was tedious and long. He read through the material they gave him in minutes, processed it half as fast, and was done with his work almost instantly after they gave it to him. He'd also learned exactly how annoying a group of 6-year-olds could be. On one hand, they were impressionable and had picked up on their parents' attitudes towards him. In the first week they'd tried picking on him, but he'd ignored it and they gave up easily. Then when it became obvious he was above and beyond them in terms of skill, they tried to befriend him, but he soon found he couldn't even begin to tolerate them. You keep thinking that. I will. In fact, Keep thinking that, Sasuke. And I'll lap up your delicious tears as I prove you wrong. I heard Uchiha tears were the tastiest. You made that up. And Sasuke had no reply and Naruto smirked at him. He was so easy to mess with. He looked up. They were here. The infirmary. The large red and white cross painted on its wooden doors. A nurse waited outside, an impatient look on her face. She scowled at the two of them. Naruto-kun. Sasuke-kun. Why is it that, every time you two fight, there's always blood? Because we're manly men, Naruto asked coyly, causing the nurse to scowl in response. No. Far from it. You two have no restraint. It's like putting two monkeys. She scowled at them, but both boys smiled back. This had become a slight ritual between them and the head nurse. With wrenches in a cage. They keep hitting one another thinking knocking the other one out will get them freedom, when all they're doing is wasting precious little brain cells between the two of them that could help them escape. That's a contrived metaphor. Once more it was Naruto speaking up. The nurse harumphed in indignation and twisted around, grabbing both boys by the arm as she did so. Get in here, I've got a pair of idiots to heal up. XXX Sakura XX. As she ate with them, she was quiet. Normally, Sakura would assume people like Naruto and Sasuke would never notice her. Naruto and Sasuke, they were geniuses. Sasuke was the second son to a clan head, his brother was a chunin, and apparently already on the fast track to Junin. He'd likely spent all his life training to be a ninja. In fact, Sasuke could already use chakra, at the age of 6. Naruto was like Sasuke, and at the same time he wasn't. Sometimes he was like the rest of them, fun-loving, and carefree. But sometimes she saw a look in his eye, when he thought no one was looking. She saw a look that spoke of hidden intelligence far greater than what he showed. She saw taking stock, and observing, and thinking long and hard about what he was seeing. If the two of them were birds, Sasuke was a hawk soaring high in the clouds swooping down to strike his prey and stealing them into the skies, and Naruto would be an eagle or a falcon, flying even higher, touching the brim of space before diving down towards death in a defiant call, waiting until the last instant to grab its prey, killing it from the force of the blow, and she'd be that prey. She didn't know why the boys had decided to come to her rescue, but she was happy they did. She still remembered the encounter, all too clearly. There she had been, crying as her bullies stood over her, trying to stand as they pushed her down. Meek and already used to this torment that had started long before she entered the academy and despite that still continued. She'd been ready for more torment that day, and as she had expected it had come, but this time when they pushed her down and started to mock her for her frailty, a blonde boy had come rushing in, him. Naruto. Brilliant, smart, strong, Naruto. Naruto who without a clan, or any training, could keep up with Sasuke. Naruto, who seemed to stare into space for most of the class, barely paying attention yet still managing to pass tests in class with seemingly laughable ease. Following him, seemingly reluctantly, had been Sasuke. Sasuke, hard-working serious Sasuke, seemingly just as brilliant as Naruto. The two had struck it off from the get-go. That first day they'd talked. That second day they sat together. On the third day of the academy, Naruto could be found excitedly chatting with Sasuke, who followed along with a smirk on his face. They were like knights in shining armor, appearing to save a maiden in need like the stories her Ka-chan read her on occasion. The bullies dispersed after a rather one-sided brawl, and there they stood, night and day. Naruto as bright as the sun, a wide-toothed grin on his face, his sky-blue eyes brimming with delight as he stared down at her. Sasuke, a look she couldn't quite place on his face, looked down at her in interest. His black eyes, and even blacker hair, reminded her of the night. She smiled as she turned to watch them. Naruto was wolfing down ramen, his cheeks filled with the noodles as broth slowly dribbled down his lips. Sasuke ate his more reasonably, though it seemed as if he'd picked up some of the speed Naruto had when eating the noodles. Naruto-kun, maybe eat a little slower. But Sakura-chan, we only have 15 minutes left. And the walk back to the academy is 10 minutes. I have to eat it fast or else it'll go to waste. You really want me to waste good ramen, Sakura-chan? Are you so evil? Truly. Large baby blue eyes stared pleadingly at her. She laughed. 5 minutes left to eat. Had she really spent so long occupied in her own thoughts? She'd barely eaten anything that day. No doubt before school was over she'd be starving. Come on, idiot. Sakura, let's go. We don't have much time left. Sasuke had finished. A few seconds later Naruto finished his second bowl. Bye Tuki-san, see you later. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. As they walked, Sakura spoke up. I talked to my mom. And, it was Sasuke who answered. She hadn't expected that. He seemed mostly disinterested in her, but over the past 2 weeks he seemed to be slowly opening up. Ka-san said it's okay. We can train after school. She thinks it'll be good for me since you two place top in the class, and I'm third, but only because of academics. Naruto was beaming. He turned to Sasuke and smirked knowingly. See, I told you her parents would be okay with it, pay up. Sasuke grumbled, and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a 200 ryo note, likely 2 weeks of his allowance, and slapped it into the boy's hand. Naruto pocketed it and patted Sasuke on the back. We can't win them all, Sasuke. Yeah, whatever, Naruto. You guys bet on me. She didn't how to feel about that. No, she stared at Naruto. Naruto stared at her, and the awkward silence of Naruto stating such a bold-faced lie permeated their small group. She laughed, and Naruto smirked at her. Come on, let's get to class, guys. XXX Sarutobi XXX. He leaned back into his seat, deep dark lines forming as his wrinkled, turgid, face morphed into a scowl. He sighed as he was often wont to do, and picked up the wooden pipe on his desk. He stuffed it with tobacco, lit the pipe and took a deep puff of the rich smoke. His eyes scanned the weekly report on his young charge. This had become ritual now. Over the past 8 weeks he'd had his Anbu watching Naruto-kun, he'd also had them recording his daily activities to be compiled into a report at the end of the week. He read through the report one more time, this time, reading through the various notes left by both his academy instructor and his Chunin sensei. Naruto seemed to be progressing prodigiously, and looked like in less than 2 or 3 years the boy would be ready for combat. He'd have to start concealing, and colluding the boy's heritage now. He made a hand signal. Jaguar. The masked Anbu appeared before him in a blur of speed. Call the head librarian, and the administrator of records to my office. Tell my assistant to prepare some tea. Assure her to bring saucers of honey and sugar. If I remember correctly, Dashida-san favors the natural taste of honey. Jaguar bowed deep, then disappeared in a blur. In the meantime, the old cage took a deep inhale of smoke. He let the nicotine settle in his lungs, let the substance seep into his body, then slowly he breathed it out. A few minutes later his assistant walked in, 3 cups of brewed tea in hand and saucers of sugar and honey in the other. She set them down, then bowed deep to him. Is there anything else I can do for you, Hokage-sama? No, thank you. I'll call you if I am in further need of your assistance. Of course, Hokage-sama. He took his momentary reprieve to read through the weekly report once more. He chuckled as he read through his young charge's escapades. It would seem, in his own boredom, Naruto had decided to undergo various missions as he called his seemingly random assortment of pranks on his taijutsu sensei. The organized acts of minor terrorism on the man were rather well executed, and if he hadn't had Anbu there to watch Naruto and his friends partake in them, well, he wasn't sure anyone would have ever known about them. His 2 little friends seemed to be quite capable as well. One of them was Fugaku's child, not too surprising considering his family. The other was quite surprising herself. Ranked third in the class, and the daughter of a civilian council member. It would seem young Naruto-kun was finding the rather skilled members of his class and befriending them. The pattern didn't seem particularly random, and from talking with the boy he'd gotten the impression while the boy could be wild, he also did little without a plan beforehand. What was the boy playing at? Hokage-sama, you called. The quiet knock of an elder woman rang throughout his office. Her hair was white, and her skin just as wrinkled as his. Yet, despite that, her sharp blue eyes saw all, and brought to the surface a magnificent intelligence. Dashida-san, good afternoon. Have a seat, warm tea. She grabbed the cup, took the saucer of golden honey and poured it in. She took a small spoon and stirred it for a few minutes. Then she took a drink and gave a small smile. This is quite good, Hokage-sama. I'm glad you like it. I still remember your preferences from when we were young. She smiled a coy smile at him and then laughed. You old dog, you. Trying to sweeten me up before you ask an old lady for a favor. I'm just as old as you, Dashida-chan. So it's Dashida-chan again. Sarutobi smiled. It is. She took another sip of tea and sighed. So what do you want of me? I need the record on Uzumaki Naruto blacklisted, and sealed for at least the next 7 to 8 years. A blacklisting? How many jumps? The old man stopped for a moment. He hadn't thought about that. A blacklisting was a thorough classification job. Special ink was applied using the Hokage's seal and it made all files and records pertaining to a thing unable to be viewed by people that weren't the Hokage. The jumps reference to association to the people or things being blacklisted. 3. She stopped drinking her tea for a moment, cast a glance at him as if to double check. He nodded and she sighed in resignation. On who, again? Uzumaki Naruto. Oh, no wonder. I've heard he has gained quite the reputation as an upstart genius. Indeed. It doesn't take too many jumps to come to a conclusion we'd rather have safe for the time being. I doubt we'll need all 8 years. But anything to keep spying eyes uninformed and wondering. I understand. She took another sip of her tea. His father looked down at him, his dark brown eyes and jet black hair gleaming in the glow of the candle light. He read over the form, cast a look at Sasuke and then read the form once more. Sasuke stood firmly, unmoving as he waited for his father's judgment. He seemed pleased, though it was hard to tell with his father. The man's face seemed to be a stone monument, an unmoving, hardened structure that remained unchanged no matter the circumstance. Sasuke, you've done rather well. So he was pleased. That was good, Sasuke decided. He'd heard his parents' arguments over his friends. His father at first had seemed opposed to Sasuke spending time with Uzumaki Naruto, but as the months wore on, and it became obvious Naruto was another class of genius, his father's complaints had stopped. When it became even more obvious Naruto was taking those around him, that being Sasuke himself, and Sakura-chan he'd even heard the occasional praise. I think this would be good for you. I assume your friends will also be attempting this as well. Hi, Tu-san. His father was quiet once more. His face unchanging. I would like to meet your friend, Naruto. Let him know he is invited to dinner. And that was that. Sasuke was allowed to go to his room. The oppressive fear he'd held in his chest lifted and he sighed. As he walked to his room, he spotted his mother in the hallway. She cast a small smile towards him, and he knew she had some involvement in this, whatever it was. Ka-san. Sasuke-kun. Her voice was kind. He looked at her and smiled. She smiled in return and that was enough. She meant no ill will and so he continued on to his room. When he entered he sighed in frustration. Naruto seemed to be good at that. Bringing frustration and needless complication to things. Now he had to worry about how the idiotic genius would act in a formal event. He doubted Naruto would know the subtle nuances of a proper dinner. This meant he'd have to teach him, lest it reflect badly on him for not at least attempting to teach the orphan boy. He sat down and pulled a scroll off of his desk. It was orange, an obnoxious potent color that appalled him, and the scroll was covered in the neat, flowing script that was Naruto's handwriting. Hand-copied scrolls of chakra exercises. He smirked. Naruto was good at getting his hands on pieces of information he shouldn't have had. Water walking, Sasuke was glad he'd listened to his mother and tried to befriend the blonde. It had paid off, and already Sasuke could tell he'd benefited from it. They'd all benefited from their strange friendship. His father's willingness to want to meet Naruto just proved that. He read through the scroll for the last time, reassured himself that he had memorized it, then set it away to be burned later. There was a knock on his door. Enter. As his mother walked in, she had a small smile on her face. She moved forward until she came to sit on his bed. She seemed sad and happy, a mixture of emotions. In her hands she held the early graduation form he'd shown his father. Sasuke. Her voice seemed to hitch in her throat. Are you sure about this? Naruto thinks we're ready. She laughed at that and nodded. The trio had become known around Konoha. They ranked the 3 highest in their class, outshining everyone else by miles. Most people acknowledged it was due to the influence of the blonde-haired boy, though not all did so happily, or as a compliment. Sasuke didn't know this though. Does he? She looked at him and sighed. She grabbed him in a hug suddenly, gripped him tight, and sighed. She shuddered again and he felt a wet droplet fall on his head. Sasuke, be strong, be smart, be careful. I don't want to bury any of my children. Ka-san. She placed the form in his hand and got up. Rest up, Sasuke-kun. Tomorrow's going to be a hard day for you. She leaned down and kissed him on the head, then left the room. He looked at his door, waiting for something, anything, maybe her return. But his mother didn't come back and he turned around. A realization dawned on him. He'd have to teach Naruto proper etiquette. Naruto was an orphan, so knowing proper etiquette wouldn't be expected of him. But he wasn't, and so Naruto's lack of proper etiquette would reflect on him. He sighed as he jumped onto his bed. He looked up at the ceiling, then without even realizing it, fell into a deep, long sleep. The next day came easy. He got up, got ready, and went to Naruto's house to meet the blonde-haired boy. When he told him about the invitation to dinner, Naruto laughed, with that knowing smile of his. He'd scowled in anger, then sighed. You knew this was going to happen. Eventually. He looked at Naruto, raised an eyebrow and nodded. Do you have proper etiquette? Do you know the rituals? Naruto laughed again, then nodded. Come on, Sasuke. He was smirking like a fool. Of course I do. Naruto grabbed his wrist and started to run, and reluctantly he had to follow. As he was dragged from Naruto's apartment, he grunted out. Slow down. No. Damn it. Naruto. Slow the hell down. The blonde turned back and instead pulled him harder and picked up his pace. The village started to turn into a blur, it flitted past him as they sped up. Where are we going? To Sakura-chan's. Is something wrong? Why are we in such a rush? To see if her parents signed, of course. Of course. Sakura's parents were civilians. To graduate early you needed your guardians to sign your release forms. An easy task for Sasuke and Naruto. Naruto was a genius, and the Hokage seemingly personally took interest in the orphan boy's well-being. Sasuke's parents had signed, because they were ninja, and Itachi had graduated early. Civilians though. He freed his hand and then did what he remembered from one of Naruto's chakra exercises, pushed chakra into his feet. The blur turned into a tunnel of streaking colors. He felt Naruto's hand grasp around his own again, leading him to where they should go. After a few minutes they suddenly stopped. Sakura's home was a large thing. Yet it was also humble. Painted a simple eggshell white, red rose bushes waited on either side of its walls. The two of them took a few seconds to get themselves presentable. They knocked and waited. The silence was tense. Sakura came to the door a few seconds later. With a smile on her face. Did you say what I told you to say? Yes, she said. Idly he wondered what Naruto told Sakura to tell her parents. And they said yes. He smiled and Naruto yelped in excitement. He watched as his blonde-haired friend wrapped Sakura, and then him, in a wide and tight hug. Then, he started to gloat. See, what did I tell you, Sasuke? Naruto. Sakura tried to stand up for him, but it was a weak defense at best and Naruto kept at it. Who was right? That's right, me. I was right. Quote. But this was right, Sasuke. Then the blonde laughed, and Sasuke frowned in response. But, we're not done. We still have to pass the exams. I think we should be prepared, but still. Are you sure they'll put us on the same team? Sasuke looked at the blonde again and waited for a response from Naruto. We will be. The politics of the whole situation ensures we will be. What? Sasuke-kun's right. What? Think about it. 3 geniuses graduating early at the same time like the 3 Sannin. One of them is the daughter of the head of the civilian council. The other is the second son of the largest and most powerful clan in Konoha. The last is an obvious genius, and can clearly be seen leading the other 2. And best of all, we work together, we're friends, and they see us together all the time. They'd be stupid to not put us on a team. And the political pressure to put us on a team will be too strong. You seem confident about this. He looked at Naruto a second time. He did this all the time, went from buffoon to analyst, to buffoon like a swing. He smiled at him. I've never been wrong before, Sasuke. I am not going to start being wrong anytime soon. XXX the Sandame XXX. His brown eyes stared into the wooden walls. He took a puff of his pipe, leaned back into the rich, padded leather of his chair, and smiled. Moments like these were rare. It was moments like these, with no paperwork, and no imminent business to deal with that he lived for in this office. It's in moments like these, with the Konoha sun setting in the window, and a cool breeze wafting in as the day started to end, that he liked to sit and just think, to let his mind wander and just ponder on the various things it wished. Recently, it wished to think of a young blonde with eyes like the sky, and a mind as sharp as his parents, perhaps a mind too sharp for his own good. Naruto was smart. That much had been obvious. A genius really. Much like many children the Sandame had known, Konoha seemed adept at making them, though keeping them, he sighed. A genius, who had in the past 6 months since the academy started, managed to make a name for himself with his skill and prowess. A genius who had made it clear that he was the best, a genius who had found 2 other such prodigies and then brought them up high with him, all at the tender age of 6. In 6 months Naruto had skyrocketed, his skills had climbed, and the boy seemed nowhere near stopping anytime soon. Not only that, but he'd managed to drag 2 other children along with him. Sasuke, Fugaku's youngest child, and Sakura, daughter of Imaku, the head of the civilian council. The 3 of them dominated their class, and soon the 3 of them would be ninja. In truth, it was really unavoidable. Considering who his parents were, Naruto was without a doubt going to be powerful, even if he had somehow managed to not inherit any of Minato and Kushina's intellect. Yet he had, and now things would get bothersome. People had already started taking notice, and already connections were being made. Whispers and rumors were spreading, and the faster Naruto grew, the more powerful he became. It had occurred to him to deny the early graduation request. No doubt the boy was ready for early graduation, he was skilled enough. Smart enough too. However, loose dots could be connected fast, and it wouldn't take anyone too long to see the similarities between him and his father. Especially so if he showed incredible talent at a young age. But the boy, the cunning, amusing annoyance that he was, had been prepared for this. He'd had his friends, they were friends yes, but he was obviously in control of the little group of prodigies. They were his friends and teammates, as well as his lackeys. He'd had them sign and fill it out as well. Word spreads fast within the council circle, and those around them. 3 prodigies, all friends, all attempting to graduate at the same time. No, he had to sign. He let out a sigh. Naruto reminded him too much of another young prodigy he knew. One who he'd held pride in, and one who, when it came to it, he had been too weak to kill. He took a deep breath of his pipe and leaned back, deep into his chair. In truth, the boy worried him. He seemed as two-faced as the report on him implied. Going from joking youngster, to beyond his years in an instant. Able to switch between laughter and cold-hearted calculation in a heartbeat. Was the boy a cold, calculating individual beneath a facade of laughter? Much like Orochimaru. Or was he like his father, able to press that mental button, able to chill himself like ice and focus solely on what lay before him? For now, the Sandaime gave him the benefit of a doubt. But still, he would watch and be cautious of his blonde ward. 4x Naruto XXX. The 3 of them stood out in the examination center. The older children looked at them skeptically, brows raised and slight smirks on their faces. He smirked back, his eyes staring them down. He looked left, then right, and his smirk turned into a grin when he noticed both Sakura and Sasuke doing the same. He'd wondered if he was doing the right thing, pushing for early graduation. He'd pondered it for weeks, talked about it with Kurama, and still, he wasn't sure if this was right. But he had no other choice. He was above and beyond, and without a doubt in the following year they'd be placing him on course for early graduation. He'd rather he do it on his own terms. So he colluded a bit. Why not graduate early with his team? So over the past 6 months he'd trained hard, and trained his friends harder. They were too small for proper physical training, but cardio and sparring were good starts. It would be enough for them to skate by. Chakra exercises both raised their reserves and honed their skills with their life essence. Already his reserves were Chunin levels, and Sasuke's were Genin. Sakura's was nowhere near that, but her control far surpassed the 2 of them and made up for it. They were ready, they would pass, and they would blaze into the future. They'd grow strong, and make names for themselves, and when Obito finally came out of the shadows, he'd kill him. End it even if it cost him his life. But first, he looked left again. You ready? Of course we are. Sakura's voice was confident. Are you nervous, Naruto? Sasuke's smirk was mocking. I'd be stupid not to. Let's go take a seat. The exams start soon. Don't worry about the written portion, it's not weighed as heavily as the physical evaluations. A simple 75 should be enough for us to pass. But you don't want us to get a simple 75. You want us to dominate this exam, don't you? Just passing it isn't enough. He laughed. Sakura knew him too well. Let's show them that we're above and beyond. Let's go kick some and take some names. Oh, my god, you didn't just say that. She and Sasuke were laughing now. He pouted. Sakura knew how to kill his mood so easily. We're in testing room 3. Let's go. They followed, and after a few minutes they found their testing room. The large number 3 adorned above its sliding doors. Quiet mutters could be heard from the other side. He slid it open, and the room fell silent as he walked in. He looked around and stared each and every single person in the room down. Mutters rose more as Sakura and Sasuke followed him inside. They sat together, ignored the stares of the older students around them, and talked quietly amongst themselves. You guys ready? Stop asking us that. Of course we are, Sasuke said, voice filled with annoyance. I'm just making sure. Stop worrying, Naruto. You can pass no problem. It's not me I'm worried about. He grimaced when he realized how that sounded. He looked at Sakura and Sasuke. They seemed annoyed, to say the least. Well, you too, he gasped. Sasuke almost never cursed so blatantly. His insults were wittier, better timed and less blunt. He almost laughed. He'd apparently riled up the Uchiha. I meant no harm. We know Naruto, you're just a socially inept. Apparently, Sakura was mad too. She never cursed. Never. He smiled and ignored it. Then the two of them blossomed into wide-toothed smiles similar to his. A Chunin entered a few minutes later and they took their seats. They sat next to each other, Naruto and Sasuke on the periphery with Sakura in the center. The Chunin, a tall lanky man with auburn hair and eyes to match, yelled to quiet the room down. And then he flared his chakra and killing intent when only a few became silent. This, he shouted. For some of you this is the beginning of your ninja careers. All of you are here because you meet the minimum preliminary requirements for you to take the graduation exam. That does not mean that you meet the requirements to graduate. Some of you are here for early graduation. Naruto could practically feel the room full of eyes on the three of them. Do take note that despite physical limits you must still meet the requirements of the exam. One portion of which is taijutsu based. You must show exemplary taijutsu skills. Not simply for your age or stature, but as a whole. Naruto almost laughed at that. That wouldn't be a problem for them. Naruto's taijutsu form was quick and painful, his blows were vicious and left no room for the opponent to escape. Sasuke's was the darting precise style meant for use with the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. Sakura, she was the weakest link if you could call what she did weak. While not vicious like his, or precise like Sasuke's, she made up for it with chakra-laced punches, and a perfect academy style. They would have no issues with the taijutsu portion of the exam. As the exam papers were being passed around, he looked at Sakura, then Sasuke. We've got this. XXX Fugaku XXX. He was not a blind man. He was a ninja, more importantly he was an Uchiha. He could see, quite clearly, the changes in people, and the changes in his son. Sasuke had always been a smart boy, not a genius like his brother, and Fugaku often admitted had Itachi been normal or not born at all, would have been seen as a herald of the Uchiha clan. He was very talented, just not prodigious like his brother. At least, that had been the assumption he had made. But assumptions could be wrong, and an Uchiha had no shame in admitting his wrongness as long as he learned and made up from this mistake. Sasuke was a genius, he just needed another, different type, of genius to bring about his own natural inherent talent. The Uzumaki boy was that genius. It was obvious whose son he was. That blonde hair, those blue eyes, that intellect, even if his wife had not known Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato he would have known. Who did the Hokage think he was kidding? Only out of willful ignorance and denial would you not be able to connect the rather obvious clues, or perhaps lack thereof. The boy had brought out the best in Sasuke, and it had changed him. Once his son had looked up at him in awe and reserved hope, but that seemed so distant now. Now his son looked at him in, not contempt, not fear, respect. Yes, in respect, and sudden understanding of the power he held. And yet, another understanding that soon, in a few short years, and indeed how short were those years, he would surpass the power of his father. The same look Itachi had given him around that age. The sun crawled lazily through the sky and, for a brief moment, a bell rang. Then the sounds of children running out of school grounds accompanied his thoughts. He watched the examination room empty in disinterest. Then, a short excited form, much smaller than the other children, exited. Followed by a mop of pink and finally the deep rich obsidian black that was his son's hair. On all of their foreheads were the shiny new forehead protectors that marked them as new ninja of Konoha. He smiled. As expected. Sasuke spotted him, a look of surprise was marked on his face as he did so, but still he grabbed his friends and pulled them towards him. It took them only a minute to get to him. He smiled, and Sasuke again seemed surprised. He rarely smiled at all, such things should be held for truly rare occasion and this he deemed as one of them. "To-san." His son seemed to be at a loss for words. "I came to pick you up today. Your mother is busy with dinner preparations. I see you passed, as did your friends. He nodded at the pink-haired girl, and turned his attention to the blonde. Blue eyes stared into his, and had he been anyone else, he would have gasped. For a brief moment, they analyzed each other, blue against deep, almost black, brown. The boy's face was solemn as he observed him, as if he was peering into his soul and judging him. Evaluating him, his entire life, his faults and failures and success. Then a frown was on the boy's face, followed by a smile. Then, as if nothing had happened, his face returned to normal. But those eyes, he'd seen those eyes on the face of someone else. Those eyes that said a decision had been made, that a train of momentum that started with just a thought had begun. He'd seen those same eyes in the face of Namikaze Minato. He looked away, he just couldn't peer into those eyes. Then, both the girl and the blonde bowed. Hello Uchiha-san, Sama. The boy had let the san trail. He wanted Fugaku to know that his station as head of the Uchiha clan meant nothing to him, but still he held respect for the man. Hello, Uzumaki-san, formal only formal. Hello, Haruno-san. He turned to Sasuke. Uzumaki-kun, Sochi, we must not dally. Your mother has worked hard on this meal, Sasuke, and Itachi will be there as well. Ni-san's home. The sound of surprise in his voice made him chuckle. Fugaku watched as they stared at one another. Two birds of the same feather, two adults, for what else was he to call minds such as those, in the skins of children? His son Itachi watched on with interest, cold black eyes staring into sky blue pools. They were silent and their eyes roamed one another. Then suddenly, the Uzumaki boy smiled, and surprisingly his son did so in turn. Itachi hadn't smiled in years. I thank you, for inviting me to your home Fugaku-san. And I thank you, for receiving my invitation. I hope you will find your meal delicious, I hope you will find my home adequate, I hope you will find my family pleasant and your time here enjoyable. Fugaku smiled. That was an old mantra, as old as Konoha itself, maybe even older. The boy continued on. Your home is wonderful. Your family far more than pleasant, and I am sure, your meal will be splendid. Good, good. Why don't you and Sasuke-kun go and wash up before we eat? When you return we will discuss what needs to be discussed. Do what needs to be done. By then my wife should be done. Quote. They were back a few minutes later, and once more the Uzumaki bowed. The meal before them was a simple one. Rice and steamed tuna, with lightly fried vegetables. He waited, as was tradition, for his guest to eat first. The boy waited as well, taking time to look at every piece of food, savor the smells, and then he smiled. A wonderful meal, Uchiha-sama. The blonde turned to his wife. My mouth waters at the thought of eating it. He picked up his chopsticks and slowly started to eat his meal. Fugaku followed, and afterwards his wife and children started to eat as well. They ate in silence, and when they were done Makoto began to pick up the plates. It was then that Fugaku decided to speak with the young blonde. Uzumaki-san, tell me, what are your dreams? He stopped for a second. The boy looked at him, his blue eyes burrowing and seeking something in Fugaku before he responded. I want to protect my precious people. I want to become so strong that no one can touch them. I want to make them so strong that no one will even think about touching them. I want to protect Konoha and her people. I want to make my friends, and old man Hokage, proud. His voice started out strong, and stayed that way. Despite its small, high-pitched tone, Fugaku could still easily tell how serious the boy took those goals. Those are admirable dreams, Naruto-kun. The voice was that of his son. Itachi had chosen to remain quiet the entire dinner, and when he finally spoke, Fugaku could see his son's eyes peering at the Uzumaki. Their eyes locked, some deep understanding went between them, and suddenly Fugaku felt slightly lost. Set adrift at sea, an ocean of the unknown crashing down on him. His stomach wrenched. He looked at Sasuke, and he too held the same look. I hope you can achieve them. He will. Sasuke and Naruto spoke at the same time. Fugaku felt lost. Something had happened here, but what? Commandeer between similar minds. A meeting of lost souls. He sighed in annoyance before casting a casual look at the clock. It seems it is getting rather late. Itachi, why don't you escort Naruto-kun home? Of course, father. His eldest son and Time Naruto both stood. Can I go with you? Ask father. Fugaku looked at his sons and the blonde once more. Then nodded his head and Sasuke stood as well. The three exited the room a few minutes later. His wife returned as they left. So, he looked at her and allowed himself a smile. I like him, he's bound to go places. He was observing us, you know that. Judging us. I think he liked what he saw. He laughed. He deemed us worthy of protection as one of his precious people. I couldn't understand it at first. Itachi noticed it, then Sasuke. Really? His wife's voice was lightly jovial. He wants to protect us. Maybe in the future, but now he's a child. That's the thing. For now he's a child, but the years are short and soon that child will be a man. What then? His wife was quiet for a moment. Yes. He stood up and kissed her. The future looks interesting. Scarecrow. Blood dripped from his blade in the light of the full moon. His mask, a white porcelain thing inscribed with more seals than he could count, clung tightly to his face. Swirls of deep blood red swooped up from its cheeks into its beak. Twin large black circles made it its face. Intricate inks of green swirled around its face to create the illusion of feather. His black cloak was slick with blood and carried the deep metallic stench of death repeated again and again. Tonight had been a long one. A beam of thundering lighting lit the night blue and white as he jumped to the side, his Sharingan spinning in his skull simultaneously. His body was moving, acting, killing without him even being aware of it. Moments like this he became a machine. A harbinger of death. An earth just you devoured the body before it hit the ground. More blood. The machine came down, and his body moved again. He was a machine. More blood. He wasn't Kakashi Hatake, failure. More blood. He was simply Scarecrow, the executioner. Scarecrow the mass murderer. Scarecrow the blood drinker and maker of widows. He dodged right, grabbed the arm and cut through it with pure lightning manipulation. There was a scream for half a second and then the night went silent and his blade was in her throat. His jutsu ate her body once more. A flowing torrent of precious life essence, of lovely red-hued life ambrosia. He wasn't Kakashi Hatake, he was Scarecrow. He was Anbu. He was death, and like this, he didn't have to think. To feel guilty, to feel his failures. To feel the blood of Rin on his hands. Too busy with killing. His blade flashed in the night and a head was separated from its body. A cry, a distorted shout of pain. He was gone in an instant. He was Scarecrow, and no one died on his squad. He met Robin with a deep gash in her side, looking frantically for her opponent. Get your head out, you newbie, calm down. His own eyes were scanning now. Looking, and looking. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Stupid Robin for getting cut with a lightning chakra-infused blade. Stupid him for coming to help her directly instead of flanking around and taking her opponent by surprise. Stupid Cloud Junin for not masking his chakra properly. He was gone in an instant, his foot meeting flesh in an overpowered shunshin. The Junin grunted and grabbed the foot, but it was too late, he'd replaced himself with a cage bunshin at the same instant his hit connected. It exploded, and the sound carried throughout the forest. He was dead. His blood splattered throughout the forest. Scarecrow looked left. Robin was still on the ground, her blood slowly pooling beneath her feet. He sighed. Rookie, that's a skin wound in this industry. Get your shit together. Come on, you won't die. Ranger will patch you up. No one in Squad 1 has ever died, and I won't start with you today. Get your shit together, get your up, and move. He extended a hand and she shakily grabbed it. Tenzo dropped down from the tree overhead. Scarecrow cast him a look from behind his mask, twisted his hand in a series of twitches, and the masked Anbu careened off. What the hell happened to you, rookie? How'd you let him get close enough to cut you, then lose him a few seconds later? Might as well paint a target on your back and walk around for all good basic, did you? Rose dropped down as he berated Robin. She chuckled. Don't worry about it, rookie. Trust me. Senpai gets on all R the first couple months. Especially after a up. Fix her up, Rose. It'll take us a fortnight to get to Konoha if you don't. Kakashi. The blood dripped off him in a fast, harsh flow. The water seared his skin, and no matter how much of the rough, cleansing soap he used, the scent of blood wouldn't leave his body. He scrubbed furiously, he always did. He hated the after-mission regret. No, not regret, the after-mission shame he felt. The complete feeling of dread that consumed him once his task was done. When he was on a mission, when he was Scarecrow, he became the mask. He became the machine that did his duty for Konoha. He wasn't Kakashi the failure. He wasn't Kakashi the weakling. He wasn't Kakashi who let his best friend die, and then killed the woman he loved just a few short years later. He wasn't Kakashi who promised to watch his sensei's son and then fled because he couldn't stand to look in those two blue eyes that looked far, 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 too much like his father's. During those times he was just Scarecrow. Just Scarecrow. He stepped out the shower with a bored look on his face, walked to his locker and put on his clothes. He sighed, and started his slow walk towards the Anbu barracks. His room was a Spartan thing, a concrete cell more than anything else tucked into the furthest back of the barracks. He lay on his thin futon and placed his blade in its holder on the far wall. His eyes gazed up at the bare concrete for an eternity before he fell asleep. The loud knock on his room door woke him up some time later. His eyes scanned the room once more. He grabbed his white porcelain mask and slipped it on. His blade was on his back in a few moments, and he answered the door with the lackluster care he had become famous for. Scarecrow. Hi. Anbu number 0402005, Alpha. Hi. The tall gray-masked Anbu dropped the red scroll in his hand. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. A summons from the Sandame. When he looked back up, the gray-masked Anbu was gone. He looked back at his bare cell, looked down once more at the red scroll in his hand, and felt a wave of nausea rush over him. Too soon. It was too damn soon. The Sandame sat behind his desk when he appeared in his office in a cloudless Shunshin. The old man, the monster on the battlefield in the guise of a grandfather, looked up from his task to look at him. His eyes were kind and soft, but his face was stern, and Kakashi felt his heart drop even more. Scarecrow, remove your mask. His breath hitched in his throat. An Anbu was never to remove his mask on duty. The Hokage was never to ask an Anbu to remove his mask unless they were in war, or the Anbu in question was being dismissed. His time in Anbu was over with those 4 words. His time as Scarecrow was over. His heartbeat raced, his chest ached, and he wanted to scream, to plead and shout at the elderly cage before him. But he didn't, he couldn't. His pride stopped him, his will stopped him, and the stern hard look softened by those caring, deep brown eyes stopped him. He removed his mask, and the Sandame took a long, deep drag of his pipe. Kakashi. That was it then. He was dismissed from Anbu. He's graduated. Kakashi. Minato's child takes after his parents far too much. Sensei's child. Naruto. I'm not dismissing you from Anbu, Kakashi. I'm giving you a choice and asking of you a favor. The Sandame stood up. He walked around his dark mahogany desk and stood in front of his windows. Naruto-kun has graduated, and with him 2 other youths that show quite the amount of potential and genius, though not quite up to him. I can't, Hokage-sama, I'm sorry, killing intent silenced him. The old cage took another deep drag of his pipe. He let the silence drag on, enjoying his tobacco and filling the room with its sweet, cherry smell. Hokage-sama, more killing intent, and he went quiet once more. His heart thumped in his chest. I need your help, Kakashi-kun. I'm unsuited for this. I had 3 such as them and I failed horribly. I may be old, but I am no fool. I learn from my mistakes. This team, Kakashi, will be great. I can feel it in these weary, old bones. When they're older, they will be the primary powers in Konoha. Whoever teaches them now, will also stand in a place such as this. I can see it, others can see it, and so the wolves will come from the shadows and try to place their maws on the now young and undefended pups. He sighed. When he spoke again, his voice was almost wistful. Then there's Naruto-kun. He's brilliant, Kakashi. Smart, hardworking, driven, attentive. Really attentive. He notices the looks people give him, yet he ponders it. I wouldn't doubt if he has some clue as to the true nature of who and what he is. That worries me, Kakashi. Can you imagine Minato's son, a prodigy, going against the village because of their fear and anger? Can you imagine him doing so except now with the might of the Kyuubi no Yoko at his control? And then there's the fact that it's now obvious to those looking, that he is Minato's son. The similarities are too obvious, the other nations will take notice, and they'll move to remove him before he becomes a danger. The longer they wait, the more dangerous he becomes. Sensei's son. I need someone I can trust not to take advantage of him. I need someone I can trust not to hurt him and to steer him, and his entire team of little geniuses, in the right directions. Down the path of the will of fire. I need someone I can trust to protect him, them, with their lives. I need you, Kakashi, I do. But it's up to you to make that choice. I can't make it for you. He stepped back from the window and sat in his seat. His eyes looked at Kakashi, deep, dark, gray pools that stared at him with anticipation. Team assignments is in 2 days, you have 24 hours to decide. If you decide to turn down my offer, I'll return you to Anbu and you can continue your career unmolested by me. Dismissed. Naruto. Team assignments had never had him more nervous. He was sure they wouldn't split them up, but then again, he was going in blind now. He'd changed the timeline drastically, graduated as early as possible and dragged Sakura and Sasuke with him. He was sure they would get political pressure from the Uchiha, the Hokage, and Sakura's mother to push them together, he hoped. So, at 8 in the morning with the dew still on the grass, he sat in an oversized desk watching the nameless Chunin in the front of the class call out names with his breath held and his stomach in a vice. Team 7, Uzumaki Naruto, he breathed, Uchiha Sasuke, and Haruno Sakura, Team Sensei, Kakashi Hatake. He seemed confused at the last part. Looked up at the 3 small children in seats meant for pre-teens and clicked his tongue. Naruto smirked and leant back into his seat. You were right. Sasuke seemed impressed. I was. So. Sasuke dragged the sound on. So. What's our sensei like? He seemed annoyed and Naruto couldn't help but to laugh. What makes you think I know? You always know. Now stop being a jerk and just tell us, Naruto. Sakura whispered in his ear. She seemed as annoyed as Sasuke was, and that caused him to sigh. He'll be a little late. Once everybody leaves, the best thing we can do is go get lunch and come back, maybe take a little nap too. Lunch and a nap? That sounds like more than a little late. It won't be too late in comparison to how he usually is. He looked up. Senseis were already arriving and leaving with their students. Let's go get lunch and then we'll head back. Lunch was decent enough, though the conversation kept coming back to their soon-to-be sensei. Sasuke and Sakura were reasonably worried, and in truth so was he. They re-entered the classroom, and only one more team was left. They cast a look at the team and sat down themselves. A few minutes later, a dark-haired Junin arrived and took them away, his face flushing and looking slightly embarrassed. An hour later, Kakashi arrived. Naruto sensed him just as he entered the academy building. His chakra was a familiar presence he'd never be able to forget. He's here. Sakura seemed pissed off. He's also more than 2 hours late. Ma. Sorry about that. I got a little lost on the way. She shrieked, and they turned to the source of the voice. I'm Kakashi, your Junin sensei. Meet me on